Where is 37? Oh, 37 Brent Street.
What's the vets used to have it? The Smiths? Would you know that?
Oh, is
Years
that over
ago,
that side?
Where the
Oh, I
shed
know what
is.
you mean.
There's a big shed.
It's my side,
Yeah.
the road.
Yes.
Oh, I know where that is.
Opposite Tadpole.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, oh,
Opposite
yes. Isn't there, there's a barn down there, isn't
yeah.
there? Well,
The access is wide. It's 10 foot. I've been down there.
yeah, the
between
access
green
I would say is a
before,
bit,
So,
if people going in and out is.
Is
I
it
know
your,
there's a horse park that goes down there,
Yeah.
I've seen it.
is it your wish that we make no comments on this?
Well, it's within permitted development, so
Yes.
yeah.
We don't even have to say no comment.
You don't have to
Don't do
say
anything.
anything.
We just leave it blank.
Right, okay.
Can you talk?
Can
Is
you,
it restricted
Yeah,
by?
I'll
get Bob back, please?
Yeah.
Item 5 is reports. The first one is footpaths.
That's me.
On the whole, go first.
Yes.
Oh, sorry,
Yes,
Bob.
Bob.
Oh, yes, that's.
I'll keep it relatively short anyway. One thing from Sedgemoor, which is a bit of an update, we had a notification come through about the planning application that we'd had over at Battleborough Lane for a travellers site, which was the withdrawal of the appeal. I thought it was worth just giving the council an update as to where we are with that, because it's not as straightforward as it just being a withdrawal. Basically what happened was it was turned down, as you remember, when they reduced it to 2 units to go on there. They took it to appeal. Various issues were then debated by Sedgemoor with the applicants and the inspectors, and a number of the concerns and reasons that Sedgemoor had turned it down on were dealt with. So for example, there was an issue about landscaping. Well, they said we'll put in some extra landscaping, so that was then agreed. And it basically meant that it came down to one issue that was outstanding, which was flood risk, which was because it's flood zone 3A and they were wanting caravans. Now, when it went to appeal, the Environment Agency, who had originally objected to it, did not object to the appeal. So that then meant that several were left with a position of defending a flood risk issue without the backing of the EA. So at that point, to be fair, the applicants could have just taken it to appeal and said to the inspector, there's nothing here that they can defend it on, and gone for that route. They decided that they wouldn't do that. What they would do is they would withdraw the appeal, and then they would resubmit the whole planning application again with all the amendments that they've agreed with Sedgemoor to deal with all the other things. So there will be another planning application coming back in. So it's not a question of it's gone away, it's been withdrawn to then be resubmitted. So it will come back to the parish council.
It has now come, it is now
It's
come
already
back.
in. Okay,
So it'll be a November one and this,
right.
possibly.
Fair enough. On the county front, just a couple of things to update. You remember I told you they were looking for volunteers to help with library over the summer with reading sessions and such. Actually, they had over 7,000 children apparently visit the libraries to do both those reading sessions and also an issue that they were doing called the Space Chase, which was giving people information, or kids information about the landing on the moon and the 50th anniversary. So that went very well this year. They had a lot of people through over the summer.
How many was that?
7,000.
Well, she's really good.
I've also mentioned to you previously about the fact they're looking for more foster families. In fact, they've now, the county has done a deal with Costa, where Costa are sponsoring some fostering sessions in various towns, particularly sort of Yeovil, Shepton and Bridgewater, where they're going to have sessions where people can come along and have a chat about fostering at Costa's with the people. So it's a way of again trying to get more people involved in fostering, because there's still a huge shortage of foster families. And the difficulty, of course, is there are huge numbers of hoops for people to jump through in order to become a foster family, so it does put people off, but it's something that they're still working on. We've now been updated that the county have now confirmed, you remember they cut the gritting routes last year, they have now confirmed that the ones that were being taken out last year have now been put back in for next year with the extra budget. So they've managed to put £200,000 back into the budget for that, which now means that they've got 23 gritting lorries that are going to be out this winter, covering about 21% of the entire network across the county. They've also said that if any parishes, and I don't think it applies so much to ourselves, well, it does in two places. if you've got grip bins, which I think we've got one up here by the church and up by the footpath, if they're not full, please let the county know now, because they will then come and top them up. They're not going to come around and inspect them themselves. They're asking the parishes to do the inspection, let them know what we need, and then they'll respond if we ask for it, but they won't if we don't. And I think probably that's it for the moment in terms
Who's going to do
of...
that checking?
That will be up to
We'll
whoever.
see if we can sort that out. Yeah, we'll do that before we finish the session.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
But again, happy to take... one other thing I will just mention under the sort of session, we had the notice come through about the crime stats, and there was the issue raised about the loss of police in the area. I've had an email come through from our PCSO who basically said she wanted to clarify the position. It is not just going to be her covering the parishes. I'll read what she sent to me just so you're clear. It said, due to unforeseen circumstances, that she will be the main point of contact on the beat going forward at the moment. Mike Shaw, who is one of the other officers, is still going to be available, but he's having to have a restricted role because he's had a knee operation and therefore is not able to get out on the bike. And that's why it's mainly her that we're going to see. It's only a short-term issue, and the leadership team are looking to identify a solution as soon as possible. Avon and Somerset Constabulary is fully committed to the neighbourhood policing, and Sedgemoor are due to benefit from some additional new officers who will be joining soon after training, which is starting in October. And she has got the backing, she says, of the wider Avon and Somerset team, and she'll keep us updated on further developments. So we're not going to be down to purely one officer. If she needs to call people in, she can do. And they did just update me to say also they have been running late night visits to the vicinity of the church post the issue that we had with the roof. They were asked if they could keep an eye on it, because obviously it tends to be historically that if they've hit your roof once and there's still lead up there, they'll come back for a second time. So they are trying to keep an eye on that.
Thank you. Cynthia, footpaths.
All right. Well, I have mentioned this once before. The gate that goes into what's called Chicken Field, the side of Sheila. What's her? Barry, that's right. Barry, yes. It's really stiff, and I did point it out, but nothing's done about it. And it's still stiff. You really have to yank it to get it out open and bang it to really shut it. I mean, really push it. So, it's quite hard if somebody can't do it. But also, the people who live in that bungalow must be driving them mad, because it really is, it's a nuisance. It wants easing.
Is it a wooden gate?
No, it's a metal one. And it's either been, it's just been sprained, but it just needs to be done, because it's quite hard.
Just wondering who we could ask to
Yeah,
do
you
that.
just need
Jim.
somebody.
I'll go and have a look at
Would
that.
you mind?
Yeah, just have a look.
I've got to go.
Probably just need to get
Thank you,
up.
David.
Take your can.
But that,
Yeah.
I haven't got anything else to report actually, because I haven't really walked around, I've been away. I have not for the last fortnight.
Generally, I think the footpaths aren't too bad.
No.
Going back to all the issues going up the mud, with the bits of fencing and rails and things. Generally, it's good for the time of year, but obviously getting wetter last week.
Any comments from anyone regarding footpaths? Thank you. Move on to highways, which is me. First thing is, opposite the 30 mile an hour speed sign on the left going down Ham Road, there is a large pothole measuring about 18 by 12 and several inches deep. From that point towards the west, the camber is rather steep and uneven.
Report to highways.
At the Parish Council's request, I attended a meeting with Angie Hicks from the Speed Watch group, and I have a small report about that. Approaching Brent Knoll from Barrow along Ham Road, there is an S-bend sign. On the S-bends, approximately 100 yards further on, there is a road narrowing sign advising a reduction in speed. Immediately after this sign, there are ungated field entrances either side of the road. Within a short distance, there is a private residence on the left called Greenways, built in the 1950s. After about 200 yards, you approach the main 30-mile-an-hour speed sign, set well back into the hedge. At my time of visit, this was partly obscured by greenery. It has now been cut back, as it couldn't be done before because of nesting birds. Houses then appear on the right. I think that the existing 30-mile-an-hour speed limit was installed before Greenways was built and coincides with an earlier village boundary. As these signs are approached rapidly and within a relatively short distance, I think it will be evident that the site of the 30-mile-an-hour sign is before the expense. Are there any comments, Tom?
Happy to support the fact
Yes,
that we should ask for it to be moved, but I think, have we already written to Catherine Tyson to ask her to come out and visit, so that we can have that discussion?
Because we were talking about another issue, weren't we, with Catherine Tyson, and something to do with Woodcote and Rouse, weren't we? So maybe the same trip would do
Exactly.
both.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll add that to.
Is there anything else on highways then? Village Green, car park and toilet block.
Yeah,
Who was doing that?
it was me this
Thank you,
time.
Nigel.
Okay, so but there was no real significant findings. Car park and paths at the front here, which I'm sure you have every year when the apples decide to drop from the tree, look pretty messy. I don't know who takes on the responsibility of cleaning it up or whether it's just when it blows away. I don't know. So what normally happens every year with that?
Blows away, I think.
Well,
Right.
I should imagine as the
I think
week comes
Jason
and
picks up a...
I think that, yeah, I'm sure it
I've
does.
seen them sweeping that and
If it's obvious.
chucking them in the
There was,
trail.
in fact, there was a resident out there tonight picking up a bunch of apples and
Okay.
taking them away with us. So,
Okay. We obviously know the bench out the front there is under repair. I can see that it had sort of like hazardous sort of like tape around it to stop people from using it. Toilets I thought were in really good condition. All the flushers worked, toilet brushes were in place, paper, soap was there, so all good. Bins that I checked were empty, but basically lined with plastic bags, so all very good. I know that we spoke tonight a little bit about the chain fence that goes around. I think the whole way round where there is chain fencing, I think just over years where children have probably climbed on them or to retrieve something, they look tired, they look bent, they look droopy, and I don't know if it's something that we need to address like in the future.
Can I just say that we have discussed this within the parish council about putting a higher fence along this side because of the ring,
Yeah.
and the other fencing comes under consideration as well.
Okay. You know the fencing that you've got around this play area here, the green tall stuff. I mean that would be ideal.
That's what we're considering.
Yeah.
I looked at the park benches. One of them is starting to get a bit loose. I think if sort of like if I sat on there, probably would, I don't know, collapse maybe. So maybe we need to give that some attention. Brambles around by the slide are now at head height, so someone walking around there is likely to get scratched in the face or something or gouged on there. Grass was good, and I did check the Monkey Gym fireman's pole. Good job done there.
Well, you played all that.
No, I'm too old to get on those things.
Really?
Yeah, I give it a wiggle.
Thank you. Who is next for the...
Good question.
Bob, that's on there, is it?
Just Bob.
Thank you.
Chairman, I just mentioned in terms of one thing that you mentioned, or two things. The bench is now finished and it's back in place.
Okay.
And the other thing is on the brambles, I've been contacted today by Dave Bateman, who got the contract for doing the trees.
Yeah.
He's going to be coming in the end of this week,
Oh,
and that'll take the brambles back.
okay, excellent.
Thank you. GV Sports monthly report.
Yeah. Did you get it? Have you received it? Because
Might not say.
I had problems with this one. I normally get it and send it on, but it kept on springing back to me. I looked at it, there was nothing different on there actually, I have to say, but I couldn't understand why it wouldn't go forward. It kept on bouncing back to me.
Probably a special box ticked in the system.
Probably,
Forward.
quite probably. So I'm afraid you didn't have an actual
Okay.
report this month, but we did have one. So, and as I say, it didn't tell us any different to what the last one did, and the one before that, and the one before that.
Can I just ask on that front, had it been done after they'd done the farmer's poll?
No, it was done before that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was done a week before actually.
Well, give us a test next time as to whether
Yeah.
they report the farmer's poll.
Yes, it's always worth just checking these things, really. Yeah.
Move on to parish surgery.
Me.
Andrew was here this afternoon with Kim.
Yeah, so we had one visitor, our regular, Pauline, and she was saying that she's been staying in somebody's house in Station Road, so if you go down the village and you turn left onto Station Road, on the right hand side there is a narrow walkway which is impeded by overgrown vegetation, hedges, brambles, and she said if that could be looked at. I don't know if it's owned by somebody or whether it's just, I don't really know where it was.
No,
Does she mean that
It's not very far down.
Does she mean that the pavers now and there's very
Yeah, and then all the
yes, the
bush was over, and she
Oh,
said
yeah.
because she's walking there and back that she found that quite difficult, and she was on the road, and then she didn't feel very safe.
No,
Just,
a lot of
just
the hedges do.
involve highways. I'm sure they'll kick an enforcement notice into whoever's property it is and make give them 7 days to deal with it.
Could they?
Have we raised this matter before?
I don't,
On
yes,
Station Road?
It's on the right hand
several
side.
times
Is that
over
in
the
the
last
same place?
time.
If I'm
Thank
not
you.
joking, last year we had an issue where we weren't sure which hedge it was, because there was the one with the two rented properties windows,
Yeah, that was.
which they then cut back, I think.
Yeah, they
And
did
there's
a bit.
the other one, which I think it might be, is the, I think
Bit
it's the bay
further on.
hedge that runs in front of about 3 or 4 other
Yeah, it
properties.
does.
That's the one she's referring to.
I think it's that.
She
It
mentioned
is-
windows,
it is,
didn't
She did, definitely.
There's no room to walk properly along that. It's narrow
But previously
anyway.
said that we've given we've written to the owners to give them a chance to do it before we go heavy on the council letter. But
What do you want?
Well, we are responsible though, aren't we, as our council?
It's been brought up, hasn't it? That's been
I
brought
mean,
up.
as a general thing, I'd always, know this, but if you've got a hedge, you've got to keep it back.
if you
It
can just
does.
confirm
Well, if
that.
it encroaches on highways or anything, it's a highways issue, isn't it?
It's on the
Anything
path,
that's
isn't it?
Yeah, but the pavements is part of highways.
Yeah, but they.
Once we've established the size of this, can we ask Owen to send a
That's
letter?
on the letter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Send a letter to.
I may to the owner. Actually, in the first instance, if I can locate them, I'll probably give them a call.
Yeah.
If I chat, it's better to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because getting a letter from the parish council,
Yeah.
probably think
It's very, it's very busy on that road. Cars come right up. I know from walking my dogs there, you have to be really careful.
What's the other thing?
Right, so there's a second thing. Sorry.
There's more.
So, number 44, Brent Street, I know that you were going to have a word with your neighbours about having that orange fence removed, but Pauline has asked again if that could actually happen, as she still feels that like the hole's been filled now apparently, that she feels that it's dangerous. And Kim sort of turned around and said that taking her child to school on a push bike, it is just something that could be quite difficult and could get caught up in.
But it is dangerous. I did witness. I think I said in the
A push bike.
I witnessed someone on a bike.
The area has now been grassed.
Yes.
And,
Concreted, hasn't it?
Right.
Grass.
Well,
Oh,
So
right.
we had
Soft
I
version.
was told him he had to put it back to grass.
Oh, right, sorry.
and I think the end part of the wall at the end of that grass area is still to be finished. I'm sure once that's finished, then that
Come down.
will come down.
Okay.
It's a nice job anyway.
Yeah, nice one.
There's one additional, which came back again actually, Andrew, later on.
Oh,
she remembered the thing that she forgot earlier on, which was the road signage around Eathamy, you know, the white lines that go around the roundabout. Yeah, she raised the issue of those that were badly worn. Well, of course, we've had that before on the Drive raised that.
They've done everywhere else, but they didn't seem to
There's
do
something
it.
else, I mean, it's been mentioned on highways at least 3 occasions I can think of. But they just say it's part of a bigger scheme.
But the surface is
Well,
good
that
as
scheme
well,
is,
isn't it? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Emergency planning group.
Well, this one, I can tell you something a bit more about. Colin has been in touch with all those that were on the original group, and they're all happy to continue to serve on that group, including, but they would like a coordinator and a leader. Colin was suggesting possibly David might be prepared to take on that role. But obviously it'll be deferred.
yeah.
Colin wants to go into a bit more detail at the next meeting, but in principle, would you be?
In principle, I'd be happy to.
So yeah, I thought you might be allowed to do that.
Gentlemen, one
Yes.
other thing on that front that was mentioned the other night, which was that it was just to confirm where all the various bits of the kit now were,
Yeah.
because obviously there's the pump, there's the gas cylinders and various other bits, so it was just trying to get
we could
a
do
list that the council can hold as to what's where.
We could do it.
And that's important because
Yeah.
when we're on our insurance policy, we should really maintain a register.
Yeah.
Because it says, do you maintain a register of your equipment?
That's it.
Well, I haven't got one, so unless anybody else got one, I think it's something we ought to set up.
Yeah.
I'm happy to get it all prepared
Yeah.
and know what's there.
Yeah. That's fine.
I think it would be useful for the parish councillors to have a list of the people on this planning group,
Yeah.
so that if anybody contacts them, they've got somebody they can pass on details
With the
on.
phone numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got an email.
I know
I've got an
they
email
are.
list of them all. And I have to say, I need to check that with them because, of course, I don't think I covered that under the GDPR regulations. So I probably need to make sure they're happy for everybody else to have the information. But, you know,
Is there like a set procedure, a sort of process in place with regards to how emergencies happened and this happened, this happened, this happened, or
No.
what?
Not at the moment,
Okay.
but that needs to be put in place, I think.
it was formerly known as a flood group,
Yeah.
a flood mitigation group.
Yeah.
But we decided that it ought to be a bit more embracing than that. It could be not just flood, it could be any number of things. You know.
Okay.
So,
When this was instigated, the people that were interested were put on a management course,
Yeah.
and these,
What, like a crisis management course, you mean?
no, this is traffic management, I want to put in road closures and
Okay.
signage.
Does that go out of date?
Chapter 8.
That's
Yeah.
chapter 8,
Does
yes.
that go out of date?
No, it's still in force until May 2020.
Next year, though.
Next year.
6 months to go now. Put it in
Yeah.
practice.
Police, crime and speed watch, SID updates. I believe we've partly covered this.
we've covered that, and the SID update I'll give you later on under matters of consideration.
Thank you.
Okay.
Clerks matters, new laptop and
Laptop
associates.
is dealt with last month, that's just carried over. Clerks matters, we had a clerks liaison group meeting yesterday, and there were a number of issues that came up there, which obviously will be added to forthcoming agendas. Some of them included, for example, a mapping device, Planning Online, which is Parish Online, sorry, not Planning, Parish Online, which gives us an ability to be able to subscribe to a website, which then gives us a lot more detail of our village. So when we want to know where something is specifically, we can hone in on it on this particular piece of kit. I don't know anything about it, I haven't even gone into it yet to look at it.
What's that, Google Maps or something?
Must be something to do with that, and there's some different ones that people use, but this seems to be the one that most commonly is used. I'll have a look at it before next meeting and see what it
I think that would be very helpful.
It would. So I'll have a look at that before next meeting. There are also some, which might come under our communications thing eventually, that there are also going to be some new website requirements in terms of providing website access for disabled, etc. Now, it doesn't seem to be very well publicised, but it's there, and it's in the system somewhere, and it will become part of our requirement in the next sort of 12 months. So we need to look, when we're looking at our whole communication thing, we're looking at reevaluating the website, how we incorporate all this stuff within it. I have no idea what the restrictions are, what the liabilities are, but we certainly are going to need to do something, I think, by the sound of it. So, again, I'll try and find out more about that. You came up yesterday. The question of parish ranger was talked about. We've talked about this previously. This is somebody who is available in the parish to do the odd jobs. You know, the little things that we don't quite know who to give that to. Most parishes do seem to be having them now, even if it's only on a very limited basis. Something we might want to consider, because unless these little jobs that crop up sometimes, you know, we don't always have somebody to do them, and it might be worth considering. But of course, there is a cost involved in it, and you need to set up terms and conditions and a bit of a contract for the person. So again, it's something we might want to think about.
Did we talk about Sharon one?
We did. I think we had a group of us met here actually, didn't we? With Burn Without, I think East Brent, Lymsham, I think East Huntsville. We all got together on one occasion, and it was called. Andrew, you can help us out here. It was called something else, wasn't it? It was called
the official term is lengthsman.
Lengthsman, that's right. Yeah, that's
Victorian.
Yeah. Whether we feel we need to either share it with somebody else, because I know East Huntsville definitely have one.
Oh.
So we could possibly latch on to theirs, possibly, if we wanted to, if we felt that was appropriate. If we can get hold of East Huntsville, that is.
They can get hold of it.
But, you know, I can find out more about them, see what their parameters are and how they work and what their terms and conditions are and so on and so forth. I mean, these are all things that come up during our class things. You know, they're not things that we dealt with immediately, they're just things that we need to be aware of, really. And something that Bob probably won't want to hear, but there was a lot of criticism about parish responses, particularly on the making observations or no observations to planning applications that in fact, and it was actually raised, I think it was by East Brent Clark, actually Jim, who said that they spend an awful lot of time looking at various planning applications as part of their responsibility within the council, only to find that they seem to feel as though when it comes to planning, they seem to find some way of getting around that. You know, in other words, they seem to have ignored it completely. They come up with some very legitimate reasons, and yet somehow they seem to have managed to find a way of sidestepping it. It was quite. Jim seemed to be the one who was most concerned about it, although the others did agree that sometimes it is frustrating when the council spend a lot of time looking at planning applications. I don't quite know what he wants us to do about it, or whether he wants us to take it up with anybody, but it was raised, so you might want to have a chat with Jim yourself, actually, to see what his take on that is, because I don't think we've really experienced that ourselves, as such. But I don't know, it's something which we'll bear in mind as time goes on, I guess. But there's no issues as far as I'm concerned. That's it.
Correspondence received.
Two items really. One was to do with the post office. We've got the details here from the branch temporary closure notice for the post office, and of course we're going to come on. Well, we can talk about it now actually. Whether we want to, as a council, whether we want to respond to this, because obviously there's a fair bit of detail in here. I mean, to be honest with you, I started drafting something sort of very, very tentatively, because I thought you probably would want to respond as a parish council. It's a question of what are the key things you want to say in that response, and how you want to move forward on it, really. And we are talking about post office here, not shop. So, if you've got any comments, I would like to hear them.
Is it, sorry,
You go first.
yes. They're asking us what we think of the closure, is that?
Well, they've got a consultation period,
Yes.
which goes up to March.
Right, so we can, if we wanted to,
You
go
can,
back
you
to
can,
another.
you can either consult individually,
Yes,
or we can do it as a parish,
Yes.
as well, do it
Yes.
as a parish council.
well,
Um,
it's important, isn't it, really, to the village?
So,
And, you know, so I think most people have got an opinion.
The two things that we're consulting are permanent closure of a post office branch, permanent relocation of a post office branch, including the franchise of a directly managed branch of a new site. That's what they're talking about. So,
Yes.
you know, what our views are on that relocation. I suppose in the first instance, what they're asking us, why we need a post office. I suppose, it's getting down to basics.
so
What do
if
you want?
Manchew's retiring,
He has retired.
oh, he's retired,
He
okay.
has retired.
So there's going to be no opportunity to even advertise to see if anybody would like to take on the job?
Well, the post office themselves will do that, of course. They will advertise,
Right.
presumably somewhere within their internal network. And will come forward any solutions, because that depends, I suppose, on the person being suitable. Are their premises? You know, there's lots of issues. Is it going to be included in a different business location? Is it going to be tried to be included in the same business location? You know, there's so many issues, but I think in the first instance, I guess you really need to respond as to why the village really does need a post office.
So, what's our vehicle for getting communication feedback from the villagers? At the moment, it's either us talking to them, or we have the Brent Knoll News. Do we have anything else? Not the Brent Knoll News, the Brent
What
Knoll
is the
online, is it?
when is the kind of closing?
Well, it's
Because
not to
there
March.
has been some discussion on that website.
Or at, is it next door?
That's the one I'm talking about next one.
No, I'm not that.
I mean, maybe we should take an action ourselves just to talk to some villagers to get some feedback.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have used it and use it regularly, and then there are people who know it's there and use it when they're passing.
I mean, look, for people that can't get out of the village easily,
Well,
because
absolutely,
there's
with
no
us.
bus service now,
With us.
Getting money,
that
get-
post office is their lifeline.
Yeah.
Getting your
It's also-
pension.
It's also very much part of a community.
Yeah, of course it is.
And there is a high percentage of retired people in the
Yes.
village as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
For the fundamental issues, we actually have to gauge whether or not it's all well and good. We can say there's a high percentage of retired people, access, etc., and support and have the community. However, post office closed due to lack of use. You know, the facility of another post office, it can provide other services as well. Rooksbridge provides other services beyond what our post office does. Also, you've got the major post office in Burnham-on-Sea. So the post office is to be commercial. So the issues are, yes, there's a lot of sentiment, etc. However, if they can't find somebody to take that post on, or appropriate premises to run a post office, then that would be the death knell of the post office in Brent Knoll. The thing is, we haven't got a good way of gauging the will of the people in the parish, because we've got the Brent Knoll News, which we could put in an advert in there to say, you know, please fill in this form, send it back, send it to Bob, whatever, put it through the letterbox to gauge some consensus that way. We don't do very much on our website to actually encourage with the parishioners that way, and it falls into our new communications policy as well, because we need to embrace modern technology to actually find out what people want, because we don't know.
well,
Chairman, I think there's an element that is right in the sense that yes, of course we have to take into account and get feedback from members of the public, but also we are elected to represent the members of the public.
Yeah.
They expect us to be picking up what they feel on things, and
yeah.
this has been around for a while. I'm sure other members have had conversations with people in the village. So I think, yes, by all means, let's try and take a sounding to people. But I think we as a council have a responsibility to respond anyway as well.
Yes.
And I totally agree with Warwick, in terms of commercial, you're absolutely right, but that's the decision for the post office to take.
Mhm.
We're not here to worry about whether it's commercial for them, it's about the impact that it will have on residents. And I think the issues that people have brought up are relevant. I mean, there's still quite a lot of people in the village who do get their pensions direct from the post office at the moment, and a lot of them have done that actually to support the post office staying here. And it's by far the nearest way of getting cash for most people who've got banks as well, because you can get cash point out from it, which will go.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at Burnham and you see all the high street banks that have actually closed,
Absolutely.
then there isn't a facility. The local and the post office is that facility.
And you could draw money there from these, whereas in Brandon you've only got Nationwide that has a...
Yeah, but commercially it's a franchise.
Oh,
So anyone who would come in and take that franchise over would need a premise in which to run that post office, because the premise where it is now wouldn't be available, because the post office don't own it. So there would have to be some form of consultation of where that post office could be within inside our village, a suitable premises to be converted to a post office.
The big change, of course, is the way that the post office remunerate postmasters now. It used to be a salary. It's now based on receipts and individual transactions, which means in the case of this one currently, they're talking about 4,500 to 5,000 a year at the current usage. But of course, obviously, one would expect that if the usage was increased, then the number of items per transaction would go up as well. So.
Well, I suppose we have to consider that eventually we should have two developments in this village, one that end and one down there. So that is, I mean, it is only hypothetical because it hasn't happened yet, but they're bound to want to use the post office, I would have thought, because that's one of the criteria, wasn't it, when they're given permission that we have facilities here for people, a shop or a post office.
Presumably when a person retires or leaves, the timescale is involved. I'm surprised that the post office hadn't already advertised this post. It seems as though they have the ultimate wish of closing it.
Yeah, they've left it right to the last minute.
Yes.
Yeah, they haven't really given us
Any chance to do anything about it, yeah.
Well,
I mean, do we do a petition? You know, I
well,
don't
we
know.
ought to do something, I think, because as you say, we represent the people of this village and they are going to find it difficult. You know, a lot of people, elderly people don't bank online and stuff, you know.
No,
They don't.
no.
You have to consider that. You know,
No.
they're not all, you know, from that era.
I mean, I'm clearly happy to draft a letter on behalf of the parish council, but what I would say is if I do draft a letter, obviously I won't send it, I will send a copy, I will send a draft of it to everybody, and then would welcome additions, you know, changes or whatever, because I'm just doing it from sort of starting blocks.
Yes.
But I'm very happy to do that, and draft something, and see what it looks like.
I'm advised not for it to be closed, because it's a lifeline.
It is a lifeline to people, and
No
that's what's
buses.
happening in the
Yeah.
countryside. We're just being cut out of ordinary life. We don't have any buses. There's only one. And that's the Falkland.
So if I was a person that didn't have a car and didn't have a local family, how would I get any money? How would I get gas and electricity? How would I?
Well, you wouldn't.
Well, everything's paperless and online now, isn't it?
Right, but the thing is
It's
that
not online.
do you know what I mean? If you aren't online,
You're an elderly person.
yeah.
And there are a lot of people like that. And I think we
And
do
shouldn't you
have
be,
a...
and don't you think that we ought to be able to go and get our own money? Because I know people have carers.
Yes.
But why shouldn't you be able to go
Yeah.
and manage some of your affairs
Exactly.
independently?
Yeah, and make it they want to be independent.
Yeah.
I think it's personally, I feel responsible in the sense to represent people who can't represent themselves.
Yeah.
We've seen it so much in kind of life today where they're just pushed aside, and it is very important. in a small community, that we try to keep, their services, which are very important.
We await
It's not
Owen's draft letter.
I'll send a draft letter and then
And
we'll
respond
say
to
we've got a
that.
bit of time on our side.
Yeah.
Consultation go to March. Ideally, we want to get something off in October.
Exactly, yes.
Obviously, individual responses can be as you wish, obviously. The second item of correspondence really was, this is currently working in association with Charity Scope, helping to find new locations for and further expand the network of textile recycling banks. This was an email I had from Dave Rayner. I'm not sure whether you had any thoughts on that.
Well, if it's one of those metal things where you open the thing, shove textiles in and close it again, i.e. like your recycling bins, and potentially the areas are just outside here on the car park, isn't it, where the recycling bins were before?
There's somebody
Is a
else who's got one,
suggestion.
haven't they?
There is one outside the post office, and
There's
also,
there's one
in
going
Church
towards the
Lane.
church. Yeah. There's two in the village.
yes.
Surely that's enough.
I thought so. But
I think other than outside here on the village green, we don't have any other available sites to fit it, to site it,
No.
and it would be up to an individual to agree to site something like this on their own property.
So I'll go back and say none available at the moment from
Yes.
the council's perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Finance and approval?
Yeah, basically we've got statutory payments for the October period, 1574, there's no changes there, that's usual salary, tax and JP Mayo and GB Sports, that's all as before. Sedgemoor District Council dog bin and cleaning contract for 6 months, that's £1,368.93 including a VAT amount of £111.49. Councillor Sturgis purchase of toilet block items, which he kindly provided for us last month. The E.ON energy account for the 2nd of September 2019, very much in line with previous quarters. Even though I didn't get I get a final demand from them every time because they all seem to send it straight after the previous meeting. So I seem to always get a final demand just before our next meeting, which is not very good. Water account for the period March to September, again in line pretty well with previous usage. Class expenses and allowance for the period July to September, and that again is pretty well. So if you want to see the breakdown of that, very happy to send it to you. I'll have a complete breakdown of that. Very happy to provide. GB Sports, repair and refurbish of the fireman's pole on the village green, obviously which Nigel has seen, 463.03. That's now at least one piece of equipment that we have managed to refurbish. So I need to propose a second bill. Any questions? Any of that?
Could I ask a couple of questions? One, in terms of the regular stuff like the E.ON and the water account,
Yeah.
can we not go down the line of direct debits if they keep sending us red?
We can, and it was, in fact, one of the things that we talked about this afternoon at the audit group meeting was moving over to internet banking,
Right.
which would then allow us to set up variable direct debits with utility suppliers, because it would be variable because it's not always the same figure. So we could certainly do that, and that would apply to anything else, and it would apply probably to our contractor, and also GB Sports.
You would have to have a different
Different arrangement.
direct debit. So for E.ON, it just gives them like an opening to your bank account and they can take whatever they want. But then if we've got contractors, so we're going to pay a
It'll be a
regular
fixed
amount,
amount.
we can do a standing
It'll be
order
10 equal payments.
and we control those payments.
So I think the intention was that by the time we get round to April, that we should actually be operating effectively internet banking on all of our affairs. So that brings us a little bit more up to date, I think.
And the other question was, in GB Sports, does that include VAT?
Yes, it includes VAT.
Okay, so
I haven't got VAT amount there actually, but yeah, it
Okay.
does include VAT. Yeah, so, any other questions?
No.
Can I have a proposal? Andrea and Cynthia.
Cynthia. Now, on the updated budget, which I circulated a few weeks ago, Bob made a good point actually, and that was that we separated the items with an individual plus or minus against each item, so we knew roughly what we were doing in each area.
Okay.
Did you get the revised copy of that, or did you only have the original one? If you didn't, I'll send you one.
What you mean with the...
Yeah.
Yeah, with pluses and minuses.
Yeah, we've got that.
It just gives you, when we come to set the precept in December, it's easy to see where we were over and under and over and under. So it makes it slightly easier to set the precept. So that's the budget. We've had the second part of the precept from Sedgemoor, £16,757.50 for the second half of the year. And the audit monitoring group met this afternoon. The three members, that was Cynthia, Colin and Andrea, went through some checking processes to make sure that I wasn't running away with anything. And we also discussed one or two things. We discussed very briefly the tender for the contract, which obviously we'll come on to later on. Also made the point that the salary and tax payments to the inland revenue could be done by Sedgemoor District Council. As something which many parish councils now use the services of Sedgemoor, so that effectively it takes away that part of the agenda every month, and every month has a cheque having to be signed. It's simply Sedgemoor take it over for a fee of £85 a year, which is the same cost that we pay for our software to do it, for me to do it. So it would be better in many ways for Sedgemoor to do it, and they simply deduct it from our precept each year. So they actually deal with all the inland revenue issues, they deal with all the direct debit and payment issues, and there's somebody called Sharon Davis. Do you know Sharon Davis? She deals with salaries, and she does about 2/3 of the parish councils apparently. So I think that's something I would like to suggest we do for next year, from April. I do get a lot of inland revenue inquiries and complications which take up an awful lot of time actually. So I think that's all on finance.
Move on to matters for consideration. The first one is turf cutting at the Station Road site and launch.
This is the note I sent out about whether anybody would like to attend an official ceremony for cutting the turf at the new development at Station Road. The dates we have.
29th of October.
Who's doing it?
Well, South West Housing are
Yes.
organising it, but I think they would like to see some representation from the parish council.
Do we have a time?
Quite possibly, and if you bear with me, I'll 2 o'clock.
What day is that? I know it's 29th, but what day is it?
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Will there be drinks?
No.
Bob, are you going to go?
Yeah.
How many do you want us to go?
As many as possible.
How do you want to go? Right.
Shall we go?
Yes.
The girls?
I think it's, well, we can
Take your knife. Cut the turf.
Take your wellies.
Do you want to go?
Yes.
Go on then, I'll go as well.
You'll have to get a brand new spade.
Do you have to take your own spade?
Polished spade, will you? With a brain. With a bow on.
The next item on the agenda, communications paper pre-circulated first responses considerations. Because we haven't got a full committee tonight, we're deferring that.
Okay.
The next item is regarding the scope of recycling, which has been dealt with. Code of conduct training feedback from the 30th of September.
We had five at the and Melanie did, I thought it was an excellent session,
Yeah,
she always does do.
Very informative.
Yeah.
And I have written to Melanie, thanking her for
Yeah.
the time.
I said I've got a bit of whiskey.
Yeah.
Around 25 quid.
Yeah, cheap.
I mean, obviously, there will be other opportunities, I'm sure, I'm hoping there will be other opportunities, because I think it's important everybody does attend these things once in a while,
Yeah.
because, new stuff does come up.
I mean, hopefully you've got some copies of the printouts that we have.
I have.
To members who
I can send you those, certainly, that would help.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah.
The next item
Gentlemen,
has already been covered.
Can I just say
Sorry.
one other thing? One thing that she did raise with us, which we maybe put on the agenda for next time, in terms of the agenda itself, she was suggesting that we ought to potentially move the public session actually into the meeting
Yes.
rather than it being before. You remember she said that way, then it all becomes, we would have to suspend to let people speak,
Yeah.
but that way at least it's all part of the meeting
Okay.
rather than it being external. And again, on the same sort of vein, it might be worth thinking about, a number of other parishes do, is when they do the planning ones, they allow people to speak when it gets to the actual application.
Good idea.
Because if you, like you did last time, have 4 or 5 planning applications, and you've got a load of people speaking at the beginning, how
Do you sort that?
how do you remember what it is that everyone was saying? And then it was having to call people back to say, did they help? So it might be worth looking at doing that, but that may be something for the next agenda to
Should we put that on as an item?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose typically as an example of that, when I think Peter Osborne particularly on one occasion removed himself from the meeting to go and sit at the back to address the public, technically he was doing it because of the way we do it, he was doing it outside the meeting. But if we incorporate it within the meeting, then that wouldn't be permissible, because he'd then be taking part in the meeting and he shouldn't be. So it's really to try and tidy up the whole code of conduct and declaration of interest type of scenarios, really. So, yeah, we have that to the agenda.
The next item has already been covered. That's the play equipment report, GB Sports. The next item, the tendering process update for village contract. Again, because we don't have a full committee, is deferred.
I can just tell you something about that. Obviously, I know I sent you out an email giving you some identification letters so that we didn't discuss the contractors individually on recording. Just if you just make a note of this, obviously for future discussion in November. Quote A was a total of £5,600 per annum. Quote B was £5,200 per annum. Quote C was, let me tell you there, was 7,366 per annum. And quote D was 6,993. Now none of those attribute to VAT, so they're all as they're outlined. So there's a bit of variation there, and the only thing I would say at this stage is that I've had quite a lot of dialogue with these various contractors. I need to establish with all of them whether they're absolutely clear on the churchyard, because it's the churchyard where I have the most concern. Because I think the variation of them indicates perhaps that they're not as clear on the churchyard as they could be, or they don't realise the extent of the issue. So I'm going to just check with them, and if they want before our November meeting to have a detailed look at the churchyard with a member of the council, I think I would recommend they do that, so that what they're quoting for is correct. They do know the number of cuts on the green, they do know the number of verge cuts. I've given them all the specification that we currently have. They've all got that. There were 2 out of the 6 who decided not to tender. One fairly local one actually, and one a bit further afield. But all of them have have got parish council experience, so none of them are new to parish councils. As I say,
There's just 4 in the running, isn't there?
it's just 4. There's
Yeah.
4.
So
And the cut-off day was 30th, so what we've got now is what we've
Is
got.
it?
The four options. So when we come to the November meeting, ideally we want to be able to really narrow it down and make a decision. So that's just a little bit of background for you on that.
Chairman, to just agree with the client, when we did this once before, where we ended up going for the cheapest quote, and then they found they couldn't cope with the churchyard and ended up handing the contract back to us after about 3 months. So it is something we do need to make sure they've got a grip of.
The contract is technically a 3-year one with annual reviews on either side.
Yeah.
So that gives us some flexibility. It gives the contractor some flexibility as well.
The next item is under 5-year-old play equipment to consider. I believe Colin and Bob visited, and you might want to say something, but regarding this, the decision will be deferred.
Yeah, it was Colin, myself and Brian who actually went, because it was Brian who'd initially raised it. We did go over, have a look at East Brent's play equipment, and the bit they were looking at, which someone had said was particularly good, is very similar to the tower equipment that we've got. It's a climbing frame, but it's got extra bits, and it is aimed at smaller kids than ours. So I think the feeling when we were on site was to simply replicate that, we would be duplicating a lot of what we've already got. But it is worth getting. They've got I think in the circulation file there's an advertising.
There's a flyer in there.
Well, yeah, I can't think of the word, but lots of examples of play equipment, and I think they were also going to have a word with the same manufacturers. Wicksteed, I think, was the one that done the other ones. So but Brian and Colin were going to get some details of that and then bring it back to the council for them to have a look at.
Right, thank you. Next one is chest tune updates to consider. Nothing on that.
Colin obviously is working with George on that, and there's nothing to report on that at this moment.
SID purchase and updates on new unit.
This is a slight concern to me because we sent a pro forma cheque to the company for this SID. And when I rang Richard Ibrahim up, I was rather alarmed to be told we hadn't received it yet. This was like last week, I think it was. So I phoned the company up, very worried in the first instance, I couldn't get a reply. Anyway, I did eventually get a reply, and they did come back to me, apologised, and said that they were having some batch problems in terms of accuracy and validation of the equipment. And they were relying on a new batch to be delivered, and they would be delivered this week, latest, during this working week. So what I can do is wait and see what happens on Friday and see whether Richard's promised to come back to me once he's received it.
Have you cashed the cheque?
Sorry?
Have you cashed the cheque?
Yes. So it's interesting because actually these sort of companies always require pro forma. Unless they've dealt with you before, they want pro forma. You know, there's no way
You've got no history with them.
So I'm pretty sure I don't have any concerns. Now I've spoken to them, I don't have any concerns because they seem very genuine. But you don't know. And they are answering the phone now, which is a good sign. So I'll keep on that one until the end of the week and make sure we get some.
Bob?
Just following up on the presentation we had earlier, I wonder whether we could maybe get a couple of councillors before next meeting to go around and have a look at some sites around the village as to where we should be siting the city when we do get it. Because obviously we've now had Station Road and Ham Road raised with us, and Burton Road. I think Burton Road we had a couple of sites, but one of them was where it got clobbered last time, which we're not going to repeat. But I think we do need to work out where the sites are going to be, because we'll need to get those approved by highways before we can actually put the signs up.
How do we want to progress that in terms of asking members? I mean, do you want me to ask some couple of members?
Get the sign first.
Get the